right, thank you guys. Appreciate your understanding as we get going here on our special meeting that we've had to hold here today at noon for no other reason other than scheduling purposes and special meetings. So thank you very much for being with us today. I call this meeting to order. We have need today to, on the heels of our last regular business meeting, our regular business meeting last time, there was a motion made that the superintendent convene a stay open committee and that committee come up with metrics for learning in red. And there was wanting to be some understanding of how we would like to operate as a district. So we're getting recommendations from the superintendent today. We had our group convene of parents and teachers off the heels of our last meeting where we could clearly see parents and teachers in different spaces and trying to get some better understanding of that with those two groups with very big concerns. And so we're thankful for that work that it's been able to be done and that we're able to come back today to hear from those groups and what they're recommending to this board for how learning is going to look like when we come back from Thanksgiving break.
Great. So today we have Roger, and Roger, I actually have never heard you pronounce your last name, so you're going to correct me and make sure it's correct. But Roger, who we have been blessed to have facilitate this group, and we thought it would be best if he presented the findings of the group. So Roger is here to share with the board, although the findings are in the board packet for everybody to see. Roger, thank you for your work. We're looking forward to your recommendation.
You ready for me?
We are, thank you. And we appreciate all your efforts on our behalf and in such a timely manner. Very well done, and a lot of compliments on how you convened and facilitated this group. So thank you very much.
Well, I was pleased to be able to be of assistance. This is, as I said to the group a number of times, this is a once in a century vexing issue that we're all fortunate to have to grapple with, and there simply are no correct, obvious answers here. So I was, by the way, my last name is pronounced Plotho. It's actually easier to say than it is to read. So just a little bit of background. I live in Idaho Falls. I'm a staff member of the Idaho Business for Education group, and I am the program manager for Eastern Idaho for a new youth apprenticeship program that we're in the process of standing up. I've been a journalist. I was a journalist for 36 years, and I recently finished my master's degree at Gonzaga University. I also teach online at both CEI and Gonzaga University. And my master's degree thesis was on online teaching methodologies. One thing I will just note from that experience is that the older and more sophisticated the student, the more likely online learning is to be feasible and doable. The younger the student, the more difficult and complex the process becomes. So, and the more side issues become involved. So for what that's worth. I will also tell you, the committee met 3 times. A good share of that time for the first 2 meetings in particular was spent gathering information. We met with the Southwest District. We met with physicians and others who were able to provide us a lot of very detailed information. I want to thank the superintendent. I want to thank the director of Southwest District. I want to thank others who participated, who were very gracious with their time and did not hesitate to provide us with a lot of detailed information that then the committee really dug into, spent a lot of their own personal time in between meetings going through it and trying to figure out what it meant and how to apply it. So, and then our final meeting, which was held on Thursday night, was totally committed to the process of coming to some kind of recommendation for the superintendent. And I often referred back to the language of the motion, because when you get to a point like this, when you get to a situation like this, you often are tempted to go beyond the mandate of the request. And so I was very careful to keep us within the narrow focus of what you all asked for. At the beginning of the process, I think most of the participants really came into it with a certain perspective. And I think nobody left the process without some change in their perspective. I will not tell you that everybody agreed that there was unanimity other than in purpose. So I can go through the recommendations with you if you wish. I think you have them as part of your packet, or I can discuss them to whatever degree you'd like to discuss them, or I can answer questions, however you'd like to proceed.
We appreciate that, and we have had a chance, I believe, everyone to look through. Maybe you, instead of reading the list, you can help us with some of the discussions you had that led to how you came to that decision.
Sure. Let me just say that there was a long discussion about whether the metrics we should focus on should be internal or external, meaning that are we talking about what's happening inside the district, or are we going to talk about what's happening in the larger community? And there was a lot of really intelligent discussion about that. And at the end of that discussion, there was a fairly strong consensus that the internal metrics were not more important, but more of interest in using internal metrics to make decisions rather than external. And the reason for that is ultimately what you're worried about is the impact on the district and the children and the teachers. And so if you're following metrics that are specific to that, then that seemed to resonate with a lot of the members of the committee. We talked about everything from just saying we're going to go fully online now through the end of the year, and just making that the metric, that it's a date metric. We talked about using there was no dearth of discussion about every possible kind of metric. There was a long discussion about the student attendance metric as one, and we were very close to actually having a vote on making that a metric. And then there was a discussion related to that in which there were those who said, look, how much discretion do we want to take away from the superintendent and the district in making these kinds of decisions? And so ultimately it was decided, and this is written into my letter, that the attendance metric would essentially remain unchanged, but it would not be part of what our recommendation was, because there was a feeling that it was being appropriately administered already, and there was no need to deal directly with it. And so I think that was essentially a vote of understanding and confidence, if you will, that metric was reasonably in place and reasonably being administered. So, and then it really came down to a very long and productive conversation that resulted in the somewhat connected metrics that you have in front of you, which two of which have to do with attendance and just basically the feasibility of keeping schools open based on who can come. I realize I just misspoke. The metric that I mentioned earlier that we did vote on was the availability of staff. So the 20% and 15% for secondary and elementary schools in staffing was the one that we decided to leave alone and keep in place. The student attendance is the one that we decided that the committee decided to make a recommendation on. And again, it was the purpose behind that was if attendance at any school falls below 80% for 2 weeks, that to the committee was an indication that it was really no longer feasible to function as a school under the hybrid protocols. And it was also an indication that what was happening in the community was impacting the schools to a degree that something there that it needed to be addressed. The other thing is that as more and more schools become impacted over time, you then have have more and more a district-wide issue. You have problems with substitutes. You have problems with just staffing across the board. If one school may shut down, maybe you share staffing in some fashion. And so it was determined that's where the 5 schools closed metric came out of. Finally, there was a lot of discussion about, okay, how do you decide when to open up? And at that point, we had a long conversation about if the community remains in the highest level red, you're probably not in a position to reopen until the community returns to the orange category. So I will also say that as with any process that, even though this was an in-depth and somewhat lengthy process, you're not going to get at every issue. You're not going to cover every nuance. And there were those who provided me with additional commentary at the end that were a little uneasy with some of our recommendations. It was never a unanimous vote, but the ones I have provided for you here were a significant consensus. I would say that it's likely that if you were to start this process again and go another 2 weeks and go through the same process, you might end up with a similar but different outcome. If you were to take 20 different people, even broken up, in the same way, parents and teachers in some fashion, you would probably come up with a different outcome. I think this is an example of a good outcome, a reasonable outcome that is indicative of just how dicey and essentially impossible the situation is, and there is no perfect, obvious answer to the questions that you all are grappling with.
Thank you. No, we feel you in that. Yes, we've been in this world for a few months, but really this extra step of understanding and getting the community together is really helpful to us. Is there any just lasting messages that you want us to consider, next steps of thought? You mentioned, 20 different people. I'm not sure where that thought process is there, but anything else that you would like to leave us with before I open it up to questions? The one takeaway that I would share with you is that the process of sharing perspectives, of parents sharing with teachers their
their true angst over these difficult times. The sharing with by teachers with parents of their deep concern for the students and the children, and the understanding of all parties of the issues with healthcare workers and the issues with, you know, getting children fed, and if you're in a full online mode, there are healthcare workers who can't get to work. All of that was taken into consideration. All of that was discussed. All of that was understood. And that's what makes the process so valuable, but it also what makes the outcome so difficult to arrive at, because you cannot help but impact people in direct and indirect ways, regardless of what you decide. And so I do think that while I think that the children and the students, followed by the staffing and the teachers, were at the top of the concern list, all of these other concerns that we all are aware of, that we're all grappling with, were part of the discussion and the decision making. And I just want you to know that I think no issue was left unspoken, no stone was left unturned. And I just admire people who came into this with one fairly firm set of ideas and came out having come into it with an open mind and come out the other side understanding more what's going on and why these decisions are not so straightforward. And if I could leave any message to your constituents and to constituents throughout the state of Idaho, is this is really hard. And a lot of people, here's how I started the whole process, is that I started with the assumption that everybody on that committee came into it with a certain set of perspectives, but with goodwill, and that people of goodwill can come to different conclusions and still be people of goodwill, particularly in this circumstance where, and I think the worst thing we can do is vilify people with whom we disagree, because this has no obvious or simple solution.
Appreciate those wise words. Thank you. Trustees, I'm going to go ahead and open up questions for you. Any other comments or questions you had of the group? I know a lot of you were able to watch all of the committee meetings and kind of observe them as well. Anything anybody'd like to add or have a question of?
Madam Chair, for a comment, I was trying to think. One, I wanted to express just my gratitude to Roger and to the committee members. You know, the motion came out of a place of desperation, feeling like we have this story of teachers versus parents, and there wasn't unity. And I appreciate this isn't a consensus, but I liked this process where we had equal parts, differing opinions, and they hashed through the information. It was transparent, it was focused, they were respectful. And as Roger said, maybe came out with a deeper understanding what we were facing. And I really, really appreciate all of them for their time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just echo that as well. Those of you online, I think you can see the back of my bald head is about all. This is my kip. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Stay Open Committee. I was able to watch the last two meetings in their entirety, the 17th and 19th. I was just so impressed with our folks, our teachers, our parents, their thoughtfulness, their engagement with this. I mean, it was just, honestly, it was inspiring. I was so grateful. And Allison, thank you for the motion. I think it was really an important and good step toward greater understanding, because I feel like I was watching people's opinions being influenced, in some cases change, but more than anything, the most important thing, there was understanding. It's like, oh, and I heard comments like, oh, I think we get it now. I think I wrote down a couple of things like, maybe we get it now. This red really is a tipping point, for our infrastructure as a school. Like that was just really, heard some really helpful things. And I'm very appreciative and thought it was important. And thanks for your good and fast work, Roger and committee.
Madam Chair, I might add, and it's going to sound like just a repeat, but I would also want to thank Allison. That was a breath of relief for me when you made the motion, because I felt like it was an opportunity for healing in our community. And I think that was what I witnessed. I also watched the meetings in their entirety. And first and foremost, I felt a little bit of the weight off our shoulders a little bit when other people started discussing these same things. It felt like, oh, people are feeling this, because we feel a little alone, and it's a little bit lonely, the five of us having to have the weight of this decision come back to us. So I'm so grateful that we kind of had the opportunity for other people to feel this weight and to experience it and sit in it. They had the luxury of like having a dock where they could go, and I thought, oh, if only we could brainstorm between meetings. But because of Idaho open meeting laws, we don't have that luxury. So everything people hear is what happens here in meetings. But I really appreciated what they came up with. I agree with Mike. You could hear and see people having an understanding of maybe the other side, which I think all five of us have had that experience throughout this process of coming in one way and then seeing things another way. And I just really appreciate it. I think it was super healthy for our community and very helpful for me as a trustee. And I appreciate it very much. Roger, I thought you did a fantastic job. So impressed with everyone. I literally cried a few times. We know I get a little emotional, but I was like, oh, they're doing so good. I'm really, really grateful.
Thank you, everybody.
If I may, let me just share with you one comment. I think the document you have has some comments that were added that are kind of extra notes from certain members of the committee. Let me just read one to you so that it's on the record. The Stay Open Committee was made up of many different people with varying opinions. We have proven that people with differing views can work together to come to a solid compromise for the benefit of most. Overall, we took a considerable amount of information, time, and effort to make strong recommendations. I'm proud to say I was a part of a committee that put respect and diligence above ego and self. And I think that is a good summary of what I think happened. I do not want to be Pollyanna about this, that, okay, it's all better now. That's not where we're at. But I do think this has been a productive and helpful process that, if nothing else, allowed not just the members of the committee, but I know there were a lot of people who were watching on YouTube also got a chance to see how difficult it is to grapple with this. And because we didn't, I authored part of the open meeting law for the state of Idaho some 30 years ago. I won't apologize for the difficulty that it creates, but we weren't bound, as you know, by that. And so there was a process that was able to happen in between meetings that I think also was very productive, and that that's not a luxury you all have, but that did help get us from point A to point B.
Appreciate that understanding. No, really big deal for our community and for all of us as we move forward. I think with that, we can move to Superintendent. On the heels of their work, you've put together a recommendation for us to consider.
Yes, we have, and I would like to just share some documents and again reiterate what you've already said. Listening to the interaction of our committee was really helpful. It reinforced some ideas, it opened additional doors, and so we're just really grateful that we had 20 people who their first test was that they wanted to be collaborative with people who had ideas different than theirs. And each of them, I think, demonstrated that in the committee, and we're just really grateful that they were willing. We had close to 80 volunteers between parents and staff, and so that's also a really, I think, healthy sign in our district. So based on these recommendations, we've put together some documents that just help us walk through the process. Peter, if you can go to, I don't know which one is which. Would you go to the open and closed criteria? Is which, and not that one.
Not that one. Okay.
So the next one, school closure. So what we've done in this document is really pulled out those things that we consider, that we have considered as we've moved 5 of our buildings online. You'll notice 2 of the big indicators recommended by the committee are represented here. The number of staff due out to illness, again, they said, hey, that seems to be working pretty well. We start those discussions at 15%, whether or not they're elementary or secondary. Generally, elementary, we're able to staff perhaps a little bit longer than that. And then you can see the number of students absent down there, and that 20% benchmark has been the place where we've kind of have thought about concern and those type of things. And then you'll notice their recommendation down at the bottom of this document, which says, note, if any 5 NSD school buildings need to move to remote learning, then the district would consider moving the whole district online. So we're really thinking that we have incorporated those ideas in there. Many of the other ones really are just nuances of those other indicators. So yes, we have 15% of the staff out. Well, what are they out for? Is this long-term? Is it related to a quarantine? Is this related to the flu? Is this related to an athletic activity? The length of the illness, the reason for the illness, calendar. So what's really important here, are we going to come back 2 days before we end the school semester, for example? So we think about those as we look at lengths of time. Number of subs available in the district, highly correlated to the number of absences we have on the teacher's part. A little bit of celebratory this morning. We had 73 subs take jobs today. Now, we did have 30 openings and over 139 requests, so it's been a tough day in the district. But we've consistently moved that number from about 50 taking jobs to today we've had 73. So these are all of those key things. We wanted you to see the questions. Many of these questions we've heard echoed in that committee. Well, do you think about this? Have you done that? And so we just referenced that. Peter, if you could go to the other document, please. Here, we also have, I guess, revisited a document that we created really early on that some of our thought process have been. As our medical experts talked about, if I go back to my notes, these are really the indicators that they brought out. Again, the committee did not comment on this because these are outside indicators, but they are things that we watch. And then we've talked really about student absence. And if you'll go through the next document, you'll just go down a little bit, Peter. You can see how we've tried to help us think forward. So here are the definitions, and if you go down one more page, then you can see how we're thinking specifically about positive COVID-19 tests in the community. So these are indicators that our medical community is looking at. They just are there to help us begin to think, what are we seeing in our buildings? And then if you go down to the second page, really, which are the internal indicators. Next page. Here's where we can see that we begin to break it out. So we feel pretty good if we're somewhere above 90% in our attendance with students. We begin to get worried as that number goes up, and then you can see the 20% indicating, gosh, we really need to be thinking more seriously about alternatives. You can see where we have, in our experience, this has been our experience lately, where we feel okay about staff absence. And again, you can see we hit that 15%. we want to be really careful that 15% does not automatically move a school online. There are so many nuances. So which staff are out? Are they staff that are connecting with students? Can we move staff around? And so it certainly is a benchmark that triggers more serious conversations, but we would like to retain the flexibility. Today we had a large part of Nampa High staff out. We were able, again, with 73 subs to cover most of that. So we wouldn't want this hard line that says at 15%, we're going to do it, but certainly we need to be thinking about it. Substitute availability. This is when we are saying, gosh, we're okay with 14 classrooms and 16 classrooms. We begin to be concerned. Today we did have 30 classrooms open. It is a symptom of what we're seeing in the community. And we're grateful that today is the day before Thanksgiving break, or we would have made perhaps a different decision about whether or not we could keep another building in hybrid. So we just wanted to share with you that in reflecting on the committee, integrating their thoughts and ideas. And then finally, Anita Christensen, and this is now available online. I did copy it for you because Anita just finished it probably about 90 minutes ago, where we are through November 21st. You can see that our numbers of folks that we are contact tracing, quarantining, following through because they have positive, continue to increase. And just wanted to make sure that you were aware what we're really seeing right now is reflected.
That is not online yet.
It will be.
Oh, it will be.
It is in the board packet.
Yeah.
It is in the board packet
Okay.
under the resource. So it's not in the regular place. You can find it on the web, but it is available through the board packet. The most current. So first of all, let me pause there and ask any questions that you might have related to the indicators from our committee that have been incorporated into our decision-making process.
Just an observation. We as a district have not experienced at this point significant student absenteeism. Is that accurate? I mean, just by looking at those numbers for those weeks, that our issue seems to be staff and substitute availability.
And one of the things that we've talked about is to really dissect that by grade level, because we are seeing higher absenteeism at our high school in particular. I think one of the committee members who's a high school teacher mentioned like a 70%, that she was only seeing 70%. Certainly we're seeing the higher engagement at the elementary, and certainly it's harder to look at percent attendance when you're only seeing kids 2 days a week face-to-face and 3 days in an online world. So it's, so as the way we're measuring attendance right now, those are, because we're making connections with students and they're showing up in some of those face-to-face things, we're seeing that it certainly hides some of the places where we're struggling a little bit more.
Are we thinking about needing to adjust how we're measuring absenteeism at all?
And if we stayed in hybrid, I think that we would need to look and maybe perhaps disaggregate it by our high school versus our middle school versus our elementary. Other questions?
Madam Chair, just a comment for clarification. According to the recommendation of the committee, number one, so student attendance at any school falls below 80%. So the number on this paper we're looking at is for the whole district, but that would be a case-by-case basis. Is that correct for clarification? Okay.
And what we're looking for there is we're looking for spikes. For example, if one building is impacted by multiple COVID cases, or in some cases flu maybe, or something out of our control. But certainly we are kind of looking at that individual building before we make a determination that they would move to an online.
So I guess I'm just clarifying that this, as of last week, 94% attendance, but that metric almost doesn't really matter because if we adopt this, because each building will be looked at on an individual basis, correct?
It's a good point. Thank you.
Go ahead and continue.
All right, so we do have a recommendation for the board. If you'll give me a little bit of time to read through that, because we do want to honor the thoughts that came out of our committee to make sure that we are addressing some of those concerns that didn't make it to a recommendation level, but that we certainly heard reflected or that we have concerns about as we move a building or district online. So we do, and we believe truly this is in alignment with the outcome of the Stay Open Committee, knowing that we weren't able to come to 100% consensus. But through the process, we certainly heard this idea frequently, that we would move the district to remote instruction. We believe it should be through January 13th. Teachers would report virtually on January 4th. Students return virtually on January 5th. We would invite the Board of Trustees to convene on one or other of those days so that we could look out. We would have current numbers and work toward returning to hybrid as soon as January 14th if our numbers indicate that. Remembering that our committee said, hey, we really would like to be in the orange, trending that way, looking at those numbers. We believe that that gives us time to not work 100% during Christmas break, and then also look at what our numbers are like after we've experienced Christmas and New Year's, which we really think is a critical time. We would like, starting on Monday and Tuesday, for our teachers to connect with our students, that they would organize that instruction, set expectations so that every student would have connection on Monday and Tuesday with their staff. Then staff would have some time on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to really prep quality online instruction, and so that we would have that ready to go. That keeps our staff, since the timing is really odd, that they actually could enjoy a Thanksgiving break a little bit, still meet the needs of connecting with our students on Monday and Tuesday, and then beginning to move forward. Secondary schools, as we've talked about, it would return to the schedule that they followed in August, which means they would focus on Mondays and Thursdays on their classes 1st through 4th, and on Tuesdays and Fridays on their classes 5 through 8. And then our elementaries would move forward with that every day, a morning meeting, plus the instruction, the language arts instruction, the math instruction throughout the day, etc. Teachers would continue to connect with their advisees on Wednesdays. So all of our secondary schools have assigned each student to an advisor, and we would like that connection to continue on Wednesdays. This is really a mental health check-in. This is a how are you doing in school? What kind of resources can we connect you with in order to help you with your homework or to capture the ideas? It also means that we see our students 5 days a week. We see our students 5 days a week instead of just 4 days a week. We have plans and are happy to share them with you, but wanted you to note that we will have some students on campus. A lot of this is directed through their individualized digital learning plans. Those students in special education, we were required to write those plans. We'll continue to follow those. We want to make sure that mental health services are still available for both teachers and students. Our mental health providers are ready to do telehealth, but we know in some cases that face-to-face by appointment, thinking about physical distancing certainly could continue. We would like to offer our childcare for staff and medical workers. So we currently have some space. We've talked with our Boys and Girls Club, and we believe that we can support our medical community and some first responders if childcare really is going to be an issue that keeps them from helping our community and moving forward with that, and have a way for them to apply and for us to try to work with them. Certainly have plans in place for food scarcity and getting food out to our students. Our family community resource centers will be open and able to assist families. Technology is ready, although we're really hopeful that people already have their devices and already have connectivity, but if that isn't true, they're ready to support us with that. We're already planning forward for the summer, knowing that there are some instructional gaps that we believe we're going to have to address. And so We're thinking forward related to what we could possibly do in the summer, targeting some specific gaps. And then working with our staff, whose job doesn't really make sense if students aren't in the building, how they are reassigned and what activities they would do in order to help us in this time. So all of those are things that we are working through, have thought through, and believe that we're ready to move forward with. What perhaps is most important here, and I think Roger said it really well, this isn't the panacea. We still have a variety of concerns in our district, and we still have a variety of needs that the school district wants to partner in meeting with our parents and our teachers. But more than that, if we move online and our community behavior doesn't align itself more and more with CDC, we're likely into January not see the numbers that we would really like to see in order to move us back to hybrid and then eventually to online. So this, I think, highly aligns with what the board said about connecting with our city council and our county commissioners and our
Every customer has their own safe night story. This couple loves camping adventure.
And so we just
And their SUV.
put in and encourage our community to stay as healthy as they can, to make the best choices that they can, so that we can move quickly back to getting our students back on campus.
Thank you. Trustees, do you have any questions about the plan that's been recommended to us by?
Madam Chair, I just have a few questions for clarification. I think you answered them and I'm just getting it clear in my head. If we were to go online and immediately after Thanksgiving, am I understanding correctly that next Monday and Tuesday would not be regularly scheduled school days? They would be more of an opportunity for teachers to connect with their students? Is that what I'm hearing?
So we would run the schedule that we ran. So for that reason, they kind of would be regularly scheduled.
Okay.
But the focus of that time with students would really be about setting expectations.
Kind of like the first day of school again.
Kind of like the first day of school
But it'd
again.
be counted as a regular school
And so it
day.
would be counted as a regular school day. There will be some of our teachers who are ready to go.
Yeah.
But because we're making this transition so very quickly, without that grace, we're really afraid they'll work all of Thanksgiving weekend in order to be ready. So we feel we need to offer that and build relationships again with students in that online. And then
But students would be expected to show up.
students would be expected to show up on
Great.
Monday and Tuesday, connect, make sure they're aligned.
Ready to
Yes.
go. Awesome. Mike, there's one additional question. Can you remind me when the last day of the semester is?
Sure. Somebody's gonna look.
Great. I'm sorry, I don't have anything.
We'll get it.
I think it's the 22nd,
I think it's the 22nd too, but not.
but
January 22nd.
last day of the semester is in December.
Oh, good.
It's before Christmas.
Thank you. I love the before Christmas, end of the
There we go.
semester. Great. Okay. So when these kids would, if we go remote, when they come back from Christmas, it would be a new semester for possibly.
Yeah, it would be a
First
new
two.
semester for our secondary students, remembering that our elementary are in trimesters, so it's kind of in the middle of their trimester.
I was thinking secondary. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Trustees, any other?
Yeah, I have a comment. I like the plan. I love the recommendation from the Stay Open Committee. I think the recommendation from the district is good. My concern, I like it because it's hopeful about being back being back hybrid, which I want and we all want, just to be very clear. But I reviewed all of the spikes after holidays, and we're gonna have Thanksgiving, we're gonna have Christmas, and we're gonna have New Year's. And if our spike following Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, and Halloween, I just reviewed that. After Memorial Day, we were up. 4th of July, 14 days, we were up. I mean, it kind of went up, down, and all. After Labor Day, at best, it was flat, and after Halloween, it was up. I mean, I think we have those slides. Those were showed in the Stay Open Committee. And I'm thinking about the Stay Open Committee's comments about continuity and stability. I'm just wondering if that's enough time, if it's enough time to plan for families, for students, for teachers to be remote. That's my concern. So thinking about how do we create stability and continuity and predictability. And I don't want to be negative. I'm usually a very optimistic person, but I just don't see it. I don't see the spikes not happening. So that would push everything in my mind another week or so. Okay, so if we were to meet, if the board was to meet on January 5th, but we may at that time, and I'm happy to do that, I'm happy to meet, but we may simply be seeing the numbers going up still in that 14-day spike. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure we're going to see anything that we can, act on to turn from remote to hybrid until, after the 15th, which would be 14 days, as that starts to come down. So I'm thinking more like the 20th or 21st or whatever. That's not to say we can't move forward with this plan, but I just think we really need to be aware that if the past is helpful in thinking about what happens in our community, I would love to be wrong about this. I would love it. I would love if you were wrong. I'd be like, yes, I was wrong, but I just don't think I'm going to be. And so to help our teachers, help our students, help our families, help all, I wonder if we need to take the plan that was recommended and push it, into the future a week or so. That would be my observation, thinking about, or that's my speculation, wondering out loud.
Thank you for that, Trustee Kip. Anything else?
I know I looked at those same things and wondered that same piece. I mean, so January 4th, is 4th and 5th and one, it's 3 or 4 days after the new year, so that's, I'm worried about the same thing where really when we come to meet again, which is not a problem, but in my head, data is going to be trending up. And so maybe we meet and say, yes, this is what it is, or hopefully, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be like, no, we're super wrong. We're super wrong. And the 2 million people that were traveling on Friday and Saturday in the US do not live anywhere close to us. They're not in our community, which may be the case, right? But I mean, we don't know.
It is
Truly
possible.
don't know. It is very possible. So I mean, I think that was a concern of mine, is it not out far enough? And because I know where people are, right? I mean, we're all sick of this. I mean,
yes.
Let's be honest, we're all super tired of it. And like, I think Trustee Keller brought up how like we've ebbed and flowed on different things throughout this whole process. I know I have been, to be like, no, just let's everybody go back. Like everybody needs to go back and we just need to keep functioning. But then like, okay, but this is what happens, right? And like for sanity's sake, like there are people who are going to travel to see their family because that's exactly what they need, right? I mean, to keep them mentally stable and in a place, like there are going to be choices that don't follow recommendations of CDH or Southwest District Health or any doctor or physician or anybody in this process, but it may be the right decision for that family and that group of people for their health and in that moment, right? Like I get it. So I just, I'm worried about that. I'm worried about this idea that schools are super safe. Like I know we're doing in Nampa a lot more to keep our students and staff safe than some districts throughout the state, but sometimes the store, right? Like all these other places. But when the biggest, I see the biggest bubble from Southwest District Health is within the household. I'm like, that only matters if we're like a boarding school, right? And a boarding facility. And we can keep these kiddos here and we know exactly like every moment of the day, like, are they interacting? Are they social distancing? Are they doing all these things? But whether it's them contracting it at school or parents contracting it at work or siblings contracting it at school or work and then coming home, like that's where we're then seeing our biggest exposures to this, right, is in the household. And so, which makes sense, right? But to me, it says our contact tracing is not that great. And it's not that people aren't trying. I can tell you right now, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be in Anita Christensen's shoes right now. Like, I know she's working like crazy to contact trace, but it is a job, I think, of multiple people, and the resources that we have to do that, the resources that Southwest District Health has to do that are not enough, right? To be that specific about this is what's happening. So I worry about not making sure we got to time this, and we do have data that tells us what that curve is going to look like, right? And where it's going to go up and down, when it's going to start to fall.
So I appreciate that, both of that line of thought and that depth of concern that we have. I mean, we're addressing a real question and concern of what that is. And so as I was listening to the superintendent explain her plan, she had mentioned we come back and analyze the numbers. And so maybe we should discuss what numbers we're looking at and how we might get them, because so that we can make a decision and know if we're in areas of concern of coming back or not. And so maybe superintendent, you can help me, because right now we have this great list of data because we have access to our students and our staff. And when we go fully remote, what data points do you think we'll still be able to collect while we're remote that can help us know what those numbers are?
Yes, I think a lot of them will still be able to, and I do think our committee offered us what that metric should be. Our committee suggested that we shouldn't remain remote for less than 2 weeks, so that hoping to get to that continuity. They also really encouraged us to be thoughtful that maybe it's not until we return to the orange or moving toward the orange. And I agree with Trustee Kip. One of the comments was, it started to fall apart when we hit red, when those numbers started going. So I do think the plan that we talked about is well aligned with what I heard the committee saying. So, and you're also right, Trustee Kip, this is a plan of hope where we think the soonest we could be back would be that January 14th. We just felt like we needed a check-in to see how it was going. I think it will be, we'll celebrate because it's really obvious, or we'll say, we need to think about this a little bit further down. But I think we owe it to our families and staff to say, we understand how important it is to get kids back. We're going to take a dip right there to see how close we are. I would suggest that it really is the benchmark that the committee suggested, which is us moving back into orange. And they were specific about identifying Nampa and not just Canyon County. And we now have enough information to really look at Nampa and not just Canyon County. So that's the benchmark I would encourage us to use.
So yeah, and because when we're in remote, right, we're not there's no one reporting if they're positive that they aren't able to come to work. And so all of these individual metrics, we're probably going to not.
So I do believe that we'll still have staff identifying, because if they are not able to come to work, they'll be turning in sick days and working with HR. I think we'll still be getting those reports from Southwest District Health on our students that are within our boundaries. So I do think that what doesn't have to happen is that extensive contact tracing on was that kid in PE fourth period at Nampa High.
Okay, so you do have some confidence. Yeah, that we'll at least know of staff within our district and students within our district during this period of time that we're remote of what our numbers of positive COVID are.
Yeah,
okay, I think that's helpful to gauge, right, this conversation when we come back to meet, to know what that is. And I agree, we still need to decide on what that date is, but I wanted to kind of understand if we had any data
Sure.
to use.
And just to, I want to be clear that I want us to be back in. I just am also thinking about the families from whom we've heard recently that are stressed out, kids and, and parents stressed out about exposing family members that are immunocompromised or other situations. I don't want Christmas to be like, oh my gosh, we're going to be back in, school on the 14th. I'm thinking about how do we create a nice, consistent, predictable, that is still hopeful. But if we hit a spike, then we can't be back in school until we see orange, if we follow the committee's recommendation, which I like. Anyway, I'm just trying to balance that. So I'm not against, approving the plan as it's written, but I just want to create, I don't think I am, maybe I'll change it as we talk about this, but I just want to create stability, predictability, and some peace. And I know that there's folks that are maybe viewing this and I'm talking, that's not going to create peace for everyone. I understand that. This is very difficult. But based on the evidence of the 2-week spikes, it's feeling like we may need a little more time. So I think I interrupted something. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I absolutely agree with you, Mike, but I also agree with the superintendent saying we owe it to the other families who maybe are on the other side of the coin to at least convene us and look at numbers together and say, hey, we're still looking at this. I don't want to blow it out and say, no, we refuse to look at it again until we're in the orange. I think that it's okay to come together to look at it, to discuss, even if we walk away with the exact same thought that we walked in the room with. I personally think that for those who struggle with mental illness or depression, or these kids that really do so much better being in a classroom, I would feel we did a disservice to them if we didn't continue to look forward and at least give hope by saying we're at least going to try to get together and hope for good news. So I like the idea of, I absolutely agree with what you're saying. Trends don't lie, right? To holidays. But I think that just us being willing to convene to look at numbers to discuss gives an attitude of hope.
Trustee Westfall, any thoughts or questions?
Are you ready for a motion?
I had one more. I was being polite. I asked a couple of questions previously that I would just like the benefit, I think, of everyone to hear and verify. And one of them I asked was the exact same. When is the end of semester? Mostly concerned about our high school.
It's the 18th.
Kiddos, it's the 18th and that's the.
That'll be the last
It's
day.
the Friday before Christmas.
Okay, so December 18th is end of semester
For
and.
our secondary.
Yes, thank you. And that was my bigger concern. And I said in the previous question, I think everybody thought the response was, but maybe even now that Mr. Lebu is here and we can expand a little bit more on your answer, I would love, because we've heard in meetings that grades were down and kiddos were struggling. And we've heard that opportunity to come hybrid helped alleviate some of that. And so I had a concern that we go back online, the date of when the end of semester is, I don't even know if we have discussion on pushing that or giving those opportunities, because there's some real ramifications for high schoolers with grades and transcripts. And we heard the last time that there was quite a bit more failing grades than we've had previously. And maybe just an update of where that looks, or to let people know that are listening right now that if we're online, and for those high school kiddos and parents to say, these are your resources, this is your date. If we're online, here's what you do to get your stuff turned in, for teachers to be mindful of that, of communication, and just to kind of let folks know that we're thinking about that and we're looking at it, and you had a response to me on that.
Yeah, so I'm going to kick it over to Mr.
Thank you.
We have had this discussion with all of our secondary, particularly at the high school, implemented some things already in the face-to-face world that will carry on into the online world.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the timing was really inopportune for this in an effort to address some of those struggling grades. All 3 of our high schools had developed plans to bring students back. Mr. Jers had actually helped get lesson in place, and we were ready to go to bring students back, and then this happened. So in our, sorry. Okay.
And when you say students back, it was more
On
than
Wednesdays.
the current hybrid, it was extra
It was
services.
extra in addition to the hybrid price.
Thank you.
So it would look like intervention specifically, and it was going to be in the morning. So they'd come, they'd get breakfast. They would have kind of a buffet of supports, and then we'd feed them lunch and then send them home in the afternoon. So teachers would have the afternoon. In light of what's just occurred, or what may be on the horizon, we had similar conversations about how Wednesday could look. However, Wednesdays would not be in person. It would be much more of an online type experience, reaching out to those students who are struggling.
Okay.
There's also some school plans where mentor teachers would be meeting with students, going over grades and looking at specifically what standards are they struggling in, and then helping some of those students connect, possibly on a Wednesday, those online times. So it's very targeted, specific instruction on the standard that they're failing in, or they're needing to hand in work. Much of it is actually just getting work turned in. Those are part of some of the interventions that the high schools are working at to try to provide that support with them.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the conversation on having work turned in, because I think we heard a lot of times that was difficult for kids, remote sometimes for whatever reason that is. And that having that hybrid, they had that opportunity to, here's my work,
Sure.
Here's my paper, right? And so I didn't know if there were any opportunities for drop-offs of assignments or anything like that. But really that was definitely a thought or concern, that we could have something to accommodate any of those kids that we're not sure if they're getting online, and knowing that there's a pretty hard and fast date that comes right in the middle of this decision that, like I said, has some pretty impacting, could potential have some long impacting future implications to it. So that was definitely the thought and concern.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of Mr. Liu as well? When the kids went remote in March, originally they started with kind of the same thing, and then the word got out. I have high schoolers, so I'm just giving you from my reference. Oh, our grades don't matter. Whatever we had is what we keep. And I understand why kind of some of these decisions were made. But that was when I mentioned and now I'm throwing my own kids under the bus. When I mentioned to my kids, hey, we may be going remote, they're like, oh, good, our grades don't matter anymore. So I guess my concern is making sure that they're not connecting those dots from the spring. And I understand why things happen. And it wasn't that the grades don't matter. I'm just telling you the lingo they used. I recognize grades matter. Just making sure that I just don't want these kids to think, oh, I'm remote now, so now I'm just going to sleep in because it's the holidays. And then we see so many kids, failing classes. That's my worry. And I know that's just the mom in me, but how do we prevent that?
Yeah, no, I think you're super wise in that worry. And so the communication would definitely need to be there. An extension that I'll give to the Wednesday potential issue, because although we cannot anticipate what your decision will be, we're trying to be prepared for whatever it might be. There have been conversations around supporting our CTE students, students who are involved in hands-on types of things like welding that cannot be accomplished. And so we're also including conversations around how we ensure those students can finish things up, and talked about possibly bringing in very small groups, potentially on a Wednesday, because those things there's just not a good way to do that work and to complete certifications and things like that. So,
Is that an option that would be potential in the next 6 weeks?
So our belief is that we could do that in very small numbers.
By invite of need.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just a memory, we started this school year online. We started this,
Right.
remote.
Yeah.
And at that time, my recollection is the district communicated clearly grades are going to matter this term. So certainly it's helpful to remind
Yes.
parents and students,
It's just my
but there was, there was an effort to
Right.
say, okay, friends, this is not the same. This is not part 2 of, a 3-part series. This is a different deal. This is
And it does help that they have been half remote and, so they've been weaned into this.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Yeah.
That's just my
Sure.
Not worries.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So as we've anticipated what parents might need to know, that message about grades do count. You must turn in assignments in order to impact your grades. So that is in communication that we've tentatively prepared that parents might want to know. In addition, the attendance issue is actually much easier for us when they show up every day virtually versus 2 days face-to-face, and we have to make a judgment on the 3 others. So and attendance is important. We will be taking attendance. That is a part of what we do and how we judge whether or not students are learning from the opportunities that we have. So those are 2 messages that we felt were important, that if we decide to do that, that we would need to communicate clearly. We would reiterate that even if we stayed hybrid. Attendance is important.
Yes.
Show up, grades count.
And I do appreciate, I do like the switch for the one period, for high school, the periods 1 through 4 on one day and then 5 through 8 on an additional day. I know that, I think that works really well for online learning. So I appreciate that consideration as well.
Thank you. Trustees, any further questions? Okay. Run all that through what that might look like in the proposal. I think I'm ready for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move we accept the superintendent's recommendation.
So moved, I'll second.
And just for, I heard Mike, but I also just have to do that hope and that we check in, and I really, really hope it's different. It's been a challenge to sit in these chairs and suddenly also be the public health board. You know, we are doing what the CDC said, we're doing what medical folks say. Our staff and our students have done an amazing job. So we could be open for a while. And it is so frustrating to sit here and feel like you're in a community that is not on the same page of being healthy and keeping schools open. So I want to do that check-in in January, so it's really clear that we're looking for a change in our community.
Sure.
So everyone's healthier.
Let me ask a clarifying question on that motion. What would be so you're just taking it as that, and I'm not remembering, and my computer's getting slow to get back up. Did your recommendation suggest what would be a trigger to be open again? Are we following the orange for City of Nampa?
Yeah, I think both, and we're not talking about editing the current plan, but our current plan would make that suggestion. I do think that's a recommendation from our committee, so I think those 2 things align.
Would you mind, because sometimes for everybody, it is hard to remember that motion for us of what we're considering, just to read specifically what that motion and
Yes,
recommendation
and
is.
Mr. Jers has it up on the
First
board there
one.
too. So the essence of the motion is the recommending that the district move to remote instruction through January 13th. Teachers will report virtually on January 4th. Students will return virtually on January 5th. The Board of Trustees will meet on January 4 or 5 to determine whether the district can return to hybrid instruction starting as early as January 14th.
Thank you. Super helpful for clarification.
To clarify, that does not specifically state in the orange, and you said, it's written in other places, it doesn't say we will not return until it's orange. It says we are going to determine whether we can return starting January 14th.
That is correct. That is what's saying.
Thank you.
And that will come back on January 4th or 5th. And now we'll know what state we're in, right, from Southwest District Health. We'll be able to continue to look at Anita's data that she's able to put together that we understand will still be available to us to review and see how things are going. I definitely want to speak to my second of the motion of really it from my thought processes, it had a lot to do with exhausting school resources in our district. Not everybody probably knows I did my best to keep the trustees up to date, but there's probably been in the last 4 business days, daily conversation with the superintendent and assistant superintendent about the state of our substitutes, of who we've got in classes, of district resources going in to cover. And they did everything they could do to get us to today to make this determination. And so it's super obvious that we've exhausted district administration resources, substitute resources, teacher resources. And it just from a working standpoint, it's not getting better, it's getting worse. We've already had to close 4 schools just due to the metrics that we know and the decisions that were made to do that. 5, sorry.
Yeah, 5.
Oh, 5 schools, thank you for that clarification. So I think for me, it was very apparent that I felt that we couldn't continue. I don't think our staff could continue in that aspect of just running with their hair on fire every day to try to cover that. I'm thankful for that committee, for that coming together of understanding. I was thankful to hear in the committee a lot of parents kind of even come to the realization that I thought I heard, which was my kids learned pretty well online. And so hearing that the recommendation was every day versus the every other day that they're checking in, because when some schools, I think South was the first one to go online, they maintained their hybrid schedule. So those kiddos were still only checking in online a couple times a day. So I think the switch that we heard to more often, I'm hopeful leads to more education and checking in with kids and productivity and learning, right? Because that's our end goal at the end of the day, while not being reckless. And that was the concern, right? Mandy tells us all the time, we have that responsibility to not be reckless. And where our contact tracing was running so far behind, we in our own buildings weren't 100% on top of all of our contact tracing for the rise in the percentage of positives. And we just didn't know for a while what was happening in our buildings. And so for those reasons, I'm thankful for the pause. And that's why I'm definitely supporting this motion and this decision with my second. At this time, I think, as I think through next steps, I want to ask this board to their thought processes on proactive measures. I think we now have a really good understanding and consensus on our reactive measures of when we get to these certain metrics, kind of what our decisions will be so that there will be, less discourse amongst us, but that we have a very clear understanding of what those metrics are as we're reactive to what's happening with COVID in our buildings. And now I'm kind of thinking to that next step, and maybe there are future conversations that I'm wondering if you might be interested in, because I think of proactive measures so that of what's happening in our buildings and getting to some of those root causes and deciding, is there any policy decisions that we want to look at to help alleviate what we're experiencing? And I think that's a whole separate conversation, but I think it's part of what we're dealing with. And so I wanted to throw that out there as well.
I think, sorry, Board
You're
Chair.
good.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in agreement with everybody here and the things that everybody's brought up. And I do think it's important because kids, no matter what you tell them, will tell themselves their own story. And I hear it all the time. But the concern that this is like the spring, and just be very, very clear and continue to reiterate that point that it is not like the spring. And there are graduation requirements, and if those requirements aren't met, then it will mean night school, summer school, what retaking of classes. There are consequences to those things, and we want to help. And I have continually heard and appreciate not only the district administrative team, but every employee to the building level, trying to come up with ways and things to do to help get kids where they need to do and do the interventions that need to happen. And I'm hoping our parents and our students and our community are listening. Like there are opportunities, and you just need to vocalize if this is an issue, like reach out and talk. I mean, I love the on Wednesday, the advisory, that idea of just a check-in where that one teacher can be spending that one-on-one time with those students and checking in with them and double checking what things need to be done and how can we help. Is it a connectivity issue? Is it a, what possibly is the issue? Do you need the work? What do you need to construct an email to your teacher, and how can we support to make that happen? Do we need to have an appointment, set an appointment with your counselor? Like what kinds of things can we help? So I appreciate all of those things. And I definitely just want to reiterate the meeting on January 4th and 5th. Like, yes, I think it's important. I think it's important for people to know that that we continually are looking at the data, and the data is what's going to change things, right? So if people haven't figured that pattern, right, with this that like, here's the pattern, like we have the control to change the data and decide. And so I just really, as a member of this community, I just want to stress and reach out to everybody. Like, I know it's tough, but the more we can do to keep everyone in this community safe, the sooner we get our kids back into school, and back into school full time. Because in all honesty, like, I'm still shooting for green. Like that's the end goal. And I don't like that we're here, but we are here. And yes, we keep asking. And at some point, like, I just keep thinking like, okay, but we ask, but nobody does any. Like, clearly people are not following rules and protocols and things like that. But I just want to reach out and ask again, like, yes, people need guidance and they need structure and we need rules, like we all do. So I'm asking, like, if your motivation is for kids to be back in school, which I know it's for all of us here, but I'm now really talking to the community. Like, if your motivation is you want kids back in buildings, like, we need to be doing things that are safe and that are research-based, that say, like, these are things that are gonna help, as much as it sucks to wear a mask, like, we need to be doing it. Like, the research is there and shows. And so I really want to push to our community to take this time and let's all heal. Let's heal. It's time with hopefully where, yes, we can space and distance and do those things, and heal this community so that numbers can trend down. Let's be, the city that everybody's talking about, because they're like, oh, wow, look at this turnaround with this data. Because I know we can do it. The other thing I want to mention, it's super hard. I know we have so many staff who are not going to take a break. A decision is going to be made today, and they are going to think about, what do I need to do to be the most prepared for kids? And I just want to stress, the thing that we need you to do to be the most prepared for kids is to take care of yourself. Whatever decision comes out of this meeting today should not send you into work tomorrow, or working late tonight, or working any of this break necessarily. In my heart, we need you fully rested and ready for kids come Monday, whether it's hybrid, whether it's online, whatever that looks like. I just want to make sure that you all are taking care of yourselves and helping to get there, because learning is important and learning is happening, but the best learning happens when we all are healthy and well and have the energy, right? To think of those innovative ways to engage kids, whether we're face-to-face or online. So I just want to stress that and say thank you to the community, to everyone, because I know everybody's been working hard to look at these decisions and this data and help us move forward, and district team and employees, and, you know, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. I just want to, I want to recognize that there are families out here who the decision today may be very painful for them and frustrating, depending on the way the decision goes. I have a lot of young mom friends with young kids who would find fully remote learning very difficult for them and for their families. And I just want to recognize that that is hard for a lot of families. To have their little kids home all day and have this be a hard way to learn for their young children and even kids that are older as well. But I just want to reiterate, especially what Chairman Ross talked about with internal indicators, how important it is that our schools remain open and healthy. And when they can't remain open, that we need to take a break. And so I know there are people that will have a hard time understanding, but knowing that teachers aren't available and buildings can't be open, that a decision needs to be made, even when it's a hard decision to be made.
Thank you. Trustees, are we ready to vote on the motion? All right, let's do so. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I want to address Superintendent, who I believe had something extra she
I
wanted to
just
share.
wanted to clarify, Trustee Simpson, on the Wednesdays, the implication is that it's not all one-on-one. Certainly that could happen, but the expectation is, and I just didn't want a whole group of teachers out there thinking I've got 21 independent conversations happening on Wednesdays. Certainly, if a teacher expected that or felt like it was helpful, but certainly the contact is for somebody and for all of them. And a teacher can have discretion, I guess. They could call a morning meeting. They could do it in groups of 5. They could do one-on-one. And I just wanted to bring that clarification.
Can I say something? Thank you, because I didn't want to imply any sort of expectation on my part or the board's part to dictate what needs to happen on those Wednesdays. So thank you for clarifying that. I did not mean to imply that. Thank you.
Okay. We have a second item on our agenda tonight. Today. Afternoons. It is, yes, the item in athletics and activities, and
So let me set the context for this
Perfect.
discussion as well. Southwest District Health came out with an advisory on Friday, I believe, Thursday or Friday, that really encouraged our community. I think all 6 of the counties within their jurisdiction to really actually, was to discontinue youth sports and to discontinue extracurricular activities during this time while we were in this category. In addition to this, each of our board members has received a letter from the sport athletic physicians of the St. Luke's system, who really also are encouraging us, in their words, to do our part to limit spread in the community and to really consider, and I would use the word postpone winter athletics while we have this opportunity to just make sure that we can work on numbers. We also in the board docs have shared with you a letter from our high school principals and our high school ADs who believe that our participation in athletics should mirror decisions that are made related to our academics. And the recommendation that we would bring to you based on all of those. I guess the additional thing would be the 2 physicians that spoke with us in our November meeting also really emphasized frequently the participation in athletics as a concern. So our recommendation is that we would, with all of those things, that we would postpone our winter athletics until after the first of the year, Again, this board would convene on the 4th or 5th, and you would hear a recommendation from our principals and ADs about what next steps are. So that we could perhaps make sure all of our students and all of our staff, including our coaches, have an opportunity to make sure that they're healthy. And that's the essence of the recommendation and the context from which that comes. I know it's a late item to the agenda, but Southwest didn't really issue, and it is guidance until late last week.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to address the trustees and say, you know, apologies in that it's late. Apologies that you're not getting all this information, but within the last 24 hours, we still wanted to be polite to you to allow you to decide if you wanted to take it into consideration or not. I want to remind you that at our last meeting, we did have conversation of, is this in our purview or not? It was placed in our laps in our purview to talk about sports because the SIC could not come to an agreement, and therefore it went out to all the local districts and boards to make that decision. That isn't the case currently. We don't know if they're going to change their mind because SIC also received the same letter from St. Luke's as we did. And secondarily, I appreciate the language of postpone. So if you were to make a motion to recognize that currently our plan does state that we are able to have sports in red. So careful in language because our plan currently has us allowed to play in red. And we would basically probably just be usurping our over SIC. You know, out of a concern that our staff currently has right now for our district.
Madam Chair, I would move that we would table this item until our December 8th meeting pending a recommendation from the SIC. And with the assumption that the understanding that they are meeting this next week. And since we have signed on basically to be under their recommendation, I would be curious to see if they would make an SIC recommendation so that we don't have to make this individual recommendation.
Thank you. It's been moved. Do we have a second? I'll second that so we can continue discussion.
Do we know that SIC's meeting about this?
I didn't.
SIC superintendents are meeting. I have not seen the agenda item, so I want to be careful not to imply.
But okay, I'm sorry, I missed
But SIC superintendents are meeting next week.
And what is the current directive from the SIC?
So the current directive from the SIC, and I do think our ADs are on, in case I blow this, the current directive is if we choose to participate while we're in stage 2, there are no fans. While we're in stage 3 and your county is in the red, there are no fans. And then we talked about what is essential personnel, meaning our time clock and our scorekeepers and those type of things would be essential personnel. And then felt like there was one more thing that we agreed to, that we would commit to streaming so that parents who wanted to see their athletes had the ability to do that when we weren't entertaining fans. So that's the key components of agreement emerging from SIC right now.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
This particular thing has been so uncomfortable for me since our last meeting, and hearing the doctors then and now follow up specifically call out sports. And you think about the close contact, the enclosed spaces, and then I'm haunted by Marin's words about the things that we need to weigh when we're making these decisions. And it just cries out, I would rather have kids in school and you know, and not have this, given all the medical feedback we're getting. And I respect that we're part of the SIC, but this has haunted me since that, because of that specific calling out of sports and activities is a major way of it spreading. And so I'm going to vote no, but I just had to put that out there.
No worries. Thank you.
Oh, and one question for the superintendent. You say pause, that's everything, right? No open gyms, no open mats, no. I recognize kids have access to the community to condition.
So in talking with the ADs just today, they would like permission, keeping numbers below 10, meeting the governor's guidance and physical distancing, to go back to our stage 2 protocols that we implemented in the summer and follow those stage 2 protocols, which would mean that not exceeding the 10, physically distancing where we are. They would like permission to continue through this break following that protocol.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm going to speak against the motion as well. Looking at all of our secondary ADs and principals, St. Luke's letter, I counted five times in the last board meeting that the doctors, the medical professionals, I actually made tallies. 5 times they said sports, don't do sports. So I feel like I want to honor these recommendations. I want to push pause or whatever, postpone. I don't want them to be over. I like what I just heard, that the ADs would like to continue to, I'm just going to call it practice during this pause, but I think we need to align with the recommendations from our district personnel.
Trustee Simpson?
Yeah, I am not in support of this. I worry about not all sports are the same. And definitely our winter sports, they all are inside. They are, extreme. Wrestling is, I don't know how you wrestle 6 feet apart, right? Like it's definitely not possible. And even if you're gonna play basketball, right? Like you're gonna be an arm's length sometimes away from somebody. And so it is, these sports are different, right? Than some of our fall sports. And then also so I think we have to take not only these recommendations and these things into consideration, but also the actual activity in and of itself as well into that. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about continuing with things just because I don't know what that looks like for wrestling. Is it conditioning? Is it spaced out? To me, that's an important piece of that. What does basketball? Is it conditioning, running? And which, I'm sure there are things that can happen, but I just need to read in my mind the plan and the protocols for that, thinking about that piece of things, but just specific to this current motion, I can't be in favor of the current motion.
Trustees, I'm just gonna speak and just from my heart and to each of you personally to say, these are optional sports. These are extracurriculars that these families and these athletes 100% know their sport, what they're doing, and they've heard, right? Everybody here listening, they 100% know what the medical experts are saying, what people are saying, what's happening in their community, and they do not have to participate. So if they personally feel, as a parent says, I'm not comfortable with you playing that sport, there is too high of a risk, we have high risk people at home, like everything you are concerned about is valid. But please know that by us making a decision today to say yes or no, we're ultimately removing their option to choose. And although I don't disagree with you on your concern level, I think I'm saying, should we be making a choice for others on what they do or don't do? And that's why I'm just going to remind you, these are optional. They know where they are. We have already been told by legal that we are not being willful and reckless in this with what they're doing. And as I didn't have until today, and I look at these schedules of what these kids will miss in postponing this until our next meeting, I'm just going to look at you all right now and tell you it's their whole season. They won't have sports. They won't have their season of these things. And I am not ready. We put this on within 24 hours. So we haven't really kind of gone through every ramification of steps of basically saying there won't be a season for all of you folks who have put your time and dedication and money into all of this right now. So I would just really implore you to recognize you're taking away their availability to choose for themselves. And coaches can also opt out. So if you're thinking of concern for coaches, they can absolutely opt out too. They do not have to coach as well.
Madam Chair, may I just redirect? We're not talking about canceling the season. We're talking about postponing. I understand that you are suggesting that. That's
No,
what
no,
it
no,
is.
that's the definition. That's the dates that you look on here of all of their schedules.
This is every game.
This is every game for them.
That will be postponed.
It'll be postponed.
If we can make it happen.
Okay, so this isn't, so what are we looking at here in these?
So
Because I
what you're
have,
looking at here, actually the revised schedule with Boise going wholly online
Okay.
and postponing athletics as well. These are revised schedules based on that move. Our athletic directors will then have to work in the SIC, either with our 4A colleagues or our 5A colleagues, and look at what rescheduling would look like after the beginning of the year. So we've already done it once as an SIC with Boise's choices and decisions. It would have to happen again. And again, I think, Peter, did we invite our ADs?
We did.
Randy,
And I-
Randy said he's available.
And I don't know whether if Randy Potter is available and you'd like to hear from him.
yeah, 'cause I'm
These
struggling
only
to have enough
represent the
information.
games. Remember, our season was delayed by 2 weeks. There are games and matches on the other side of this that aren't represented here.
But I would,
Already.
I would offer from looking at a schedule, because I have this schedule in my inbox from a coach, this is easily half of their schedule. So not all,
Okay.
but I would say half.
I think our accuracy of speech about this is really
Thank you.
important.
Yes.
When we start saying things like we are canceling the season, I don't.
No, I appreciate that
Sure.
because I asked for information
Yeah.
on that, and getting this here today, it is tough.
Sure.
It is. So I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, because I think
We're looking
that
at
just
half of it.
adds to the,
Oh, for sure.
you know, the stress about all these things.
Yeah.
But Madam Chair, I'd like to also say that you spun a scenario about a kid making their own decision, and being someone who has studied and worked with adolescents, kids don't make their own decisions independently, and parents feel a lot of pressure. If a school is hosting something, then there is some implied warranty of safety, which may or may not be true, but there's a lot of peer pressure to participate. So I'm not sure it's as simple and straight of a line to say this is their own choice. Yes, they do make a choice, but there's a lot of pressure to make those decisions. As a teenager, as a former teenager athlete, I wanted to do things that were unwise as I look back on now. But at the time it felt so important, and I'm just not convinced that this is so important to override what our recommendations from our secondary principals and ADs and medical professionals have suggested.
No, I appreciate that, and I do respectfully disagree. I give a lot of these kids and parents a lot of credit, and I can personally attest to their availability and maturity level to understand the levity of the times that we're in and what those are. And so I give them that credit, and I want to give them just the due to decide for themselves.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm just going to paint a scenario based on information I know because of my participation. I had 2 daughters that danced for 5 years at Columbia. And I know for a fact the Columbia High School dance team has been practicing 4 mornings a week, starting from 5:30 till 7 a.m. Parents have paid up to $700, non-refundable. They've been there every day. They've danced every single day in masks, staying 6 feet apart. They've done everything they can. I know that on here it doesn't say that their competitions will be taken away, but if we take these girls out of the gym today and do not allow them back in the gym until a week before their competition, it's all for nothing. It's literally all for nothing, and it breaks my heart. I just feel like that's an activity, that's not athletics. So maybe we can look at athletics and activities differently. I just feel like saying we're pausing everything is actually a punishment to some of these activities that have been working. I don't know any other group of students that puts their heart into their activity or sport as much as the dancers do. And I can speak to this just because this is what I know. So saying to these girls, oh, sorry, you're done. Everyone stays home till January. And maybe there'll be no competitions. You know, I don't know what January will look like. So I can't say that we're taking something away from them if there's not even a competition offered. But I hope there is. But I just think there's more on the line than, oh, tryouts are next week, or, you know, basketball, girls tryouts have already happened. Boys tryouts are happening a week from today, at least at the high school my kids attend. Anyway, so I just think there's more to take into consideration than just, oh, let's just push pause. That's my concern as a mom and as a board member. I agree with Kim that it's not that while student athletes may not make the best decisions, this is their life. This is all they know. This is all these kids live for. So for us to take that from them and not give them the opportunity to make their own choice, I disagree.
I have Eric Bonds. Sorry, I have Eric Bonds if you guys have questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
And I think I want to, the motion was to table until we heard from some, the SIC group was the motion. Okay.
Well, table till December.
December 8th.
Till December 8th meeting.
Pending a recommendation from this.
Okay, thank you for that reminder, because that was a lot of conversation just to get back to what the thought process was on the motion that we're probably looking to vote to. So, so the December 8th, and okay, we could look at it again and see. So,
Sorry.
yeah.
I totally, I get it, like I understand. And I know there's a group of people in this community who think that I don't appreciate sports. Like I do. Sports got me to exactly where I am today. Like I played 3, 4, sometimes 5 sports at the same time. Like I grew up in a house that's what you did, and we did that, and I've enjoyed it and I love it. Like I'm not gonna argue with it. It does add value. That's why we do it, right? But for me, it's not about taking a choice away, because these people still have a choice. I don't need the school to put on something. I need a basketball and a hoop, right? To play basketball. So it's not that we're taking a choice away, okay? But our facilities are being used. Our staff are helping with this, right? Our students, who all of these plans we just talked about are like, we need to have the attendance at this level. We need to have staff at this level, right? We need to have these things at this level. And so that for me, again, I know I brought this up before, was our job is to educate these kids. And that is a state requirement. This is not, you're right, it's extra. And I'm not saying like cancel. I like the postpone, because postpone means we're gonna come up with a new date, right? Like it's not, and I get it, and it is a hard decision. This keeps coming back as we say, like people have made a decision, right? Like parents and school boards and adults make decisions every day for kids. And I know kids get frustrated with it. They do, right? And this idea that, you know, things happen and life happens and people pass away, right? All those things happen.
I'm gonna let him know that you stop.
We don't then just go, you know what? I'm gonna let you play wherever you wanna play. Because if my neighbor kids who are not my children are playing in the street, you better believe I'm walking over there to make sure they're not playing in the street, right? So we have to make decisions based on, but I think overarching, our decision has to be at what we're required to do, which is to educate these kids. So are we making decisions that get us to that point? Or are we making decisions that don't? And I'm just, from a personal level, when two doctors tell me absolutely no in red, like, and to disregard that, it is not okay. Like, and you're right, like, I know what Maren said, but I'm telling you, like, there unequivocally, there was no hesitance on any of that. They didn't want to make a recommendation on anything else we should do. That was the one thing they stood firm on. Nobody else wants to make this decision, right? Nobody else wants to make a decision about should we be or shouldn't we be in school, right? That are bringing in recommendations. Like, I get it and we see it, right? But these were hard, fast, no, shouldn't happen. This is definitely where we are, which is different to me than I think this can happen. And I think we can make it work. So I just.
No, and I appreciate that. And that's where I want to remind you, we don't have to make this decision. I was super thankful that the SIC came together and made that decision, and they do have the same material and whatnot. So and it's because I understand where this district is, and some of you board members, that we're absolutely bringing this here for our discussion to talk about. But that I was very thankful that the SIC came together and did that.
Can I ask a question of what would it look like if this motion passes? What does that look like with, I mean, I think some people then say, like, I think it's maybe more for the ADs, the superintendent, like, what do things look like if no, we just continue? Some people think Thanksgiving is a break off, but when I coached high school basketball and high school sports, like, and played in them, you're participating and you're practicing over the break. It's not a week off. So I thinking to that December 8th, like, and we may or may not have information from the SIC by that time, but like, what would that look like? How would things continuing to play out? What would that look like? And maybe we don't know. I didn't think to necessarily ask that question, and maybe we do want to get Eric back on the phone, but I'm sorry.
Eric is on the phone, and I think he's probably the best person to answer that. Is he on the phone?
I can
He
promote
said he got
mine.
cut off. Oh,
So by the schedule, we can see that there's things scheduled on December 11th, December 4th, 5th, 8th,
Yeah.
December 7th, December 2nd,
First,
9th. So those would go forward.
Eric is a panelist.
Superintendent, if we were to follow the administration of recommendation, kids would practice.
so kids would practice under stage 2 guidelines. And stage 2 guidelines, and I'm sorry I didn't review them. If you remember, in June, right, as the governor was moving us up there, it was really our first stage where they were allowed to condition, they were allowed to do certain things in small groups. We actually, I think, said no more than 5. In order to meet current stage 2, they could have 10 there, maybe plotting in 2 groups of 5. So in basketball type of things would be okay. Talk with our wrestling coaches, and my understanding is that they're willing to work with a different weight class so that they would not have more than 10 there. So it would be limited practice. According to IHSA, we believe they would count as practices so that when the season did begin or start up again from the postponement, that our students would be ready to compete. So that's my best stab at that.
Are the first competitions then first?
It's like the third girls basketball. Oh, the first.
Remember, SIC agreed to delay everything 2 weeks. So these are pushed back a ways. Basketball and wrestling were started later than our girls basketball.
But these are the later dates.
Yes, I believe that they are.
Thank you.
And may I ask a question? So what is, Boise is remote learning. What is their status with sports?
No athletics,
No athletics.
no athletics till after the first of the year.
Okay, so it's conceivable that if we as a district followed these guidelines, that would be a second district that is doing that, which would help the SIC to make a decision potentially to delay, right? If the NSD along with Boise has pushed it back and said, wait, we think this is too important, we're listening to all of this, then that just seems to me to be another weight on the scale for the SIC to think about how do we rearrange the schedule.
May I ask a question? Do we know how many other 4A schools have canceled or not canceled, but are postponing sports? How many 4A school districts other than ours? Because for 5A, that's 4 high schools that they play, but 5 high schools from last data that are continuing to move forward. And then in 4A, it's 3 Nampa high schools, and then I don't remember exactly how many, but I know we work with several other districts.
Yeah, it's Eric on there.
You can unmute and turn on this video.
And Eric's team is in the 5A arena, so he's gonna take his best stab at 4A. He knows, I'm sure.
Superintendent Keller, I'm here.
That's Randy.
That's Randy.
Randy, would you tell
Yes.
us about your understanding with 4A schools and what their plans are at this time?
Well, right now, everybody was together as far as delaying. Girls' games would not start until November 30th, the week of November 30th, and the boys would not start until December 11th. Right now, only the Nampa School District, and I believe Caldwell is leaning that way, would delay through the month of December. What we're concerned about, listening and hearing that we would like to wait until the SIC makes a decision. We're concerned that SIC is not going to make a decision for the Nampa School District. They're not going to overstep their bounds and say, this is what we're deciding for the SIC. What they're going to leave that up to each individual district's local control. So what we worry about is waiting till that December 8th. The SIC is not going to tell the Nampa School District what to do, personally.
Randy, why did you folks bring forward this recommendation?
I think one of the biggest thing was our kids last spring lost everything. When we got to March and we shut everything down, they no longer had a season. They were not able to have a district tournament. So their season was completely shut down. With our recommendation here and trying to delay and seeing what happens for a month, we're still able to have half a girls' season, a little bit more than that of a boys' season. Our wrestling would still be a pretty complete schedule and be able to give the 3 winter sports a chance to at least have a district tournament and complete some of their season. So just the hope that we can maybe have an end of a season instead of just shutting the whole thing down.
Have you talked with athletes and families about this?
No, our coaches have. We've kind of told our coaches just go forward, not really to bring this up to kids and to parents. So I would say no, we haven't discussed this with our parents.
Randy, it's Betsy Keller. I'm wondering what your take is on activities versus athletics. I specifically brought up the dance team earlier. You know where my heart is there. So my question for you is, do you feel like your letter that came specifically mentioned athletics? Did it also? It says activities. So how do you take Wild Pride out of the gym? What do you do in this scenario, do you think?
Well, where that's unfortunate too, and I know where your heart is, Betsy, and I know that sometimes our dance girls and teams work extremely hard. I don't know that they would be any different than our girls basketball team that's going right now. I think the hardest thing would be to step in and tell them tonight at practice, hey, you're done. but I think we have to lump them all together. Our dance, cheer, and our 3 winter sports have to be lumped together. Now, dance and cheer can do things outside the school system because some of those activities are things they can do outside school. But I know that it's hard on everybody, but I think we have to lump them all together.
So even though they've been dancing in masks, I know you can't always stay 6 feet apart in every dance if you're performing, but
yeah, it's hard to tell girls basketball that they can't participate, but the dancers can.
Yeah, I get it.
Mr. Potter, this is Kim Rost. I appreciate your conversation that says, hey, we want to postpone and push so they get a season in districts instead of saying you're completely done. How do you propose that happens if we make a decision today as the Nampa School District outside of the SIC group and all the other school districts involved to make districts happen?
Well, I guess we would hopefully come back in January and our numbers are to where we can go back to the orange category and we can restart our seasons. That would be our only hope, knowing that, realistically, is that going to happen, or are our numbers going to go down after Christmas, Thanksgiving, and New Year's Eve, New Year's Day? So I guess we would just be crossing our fingers that numbers would slow down, and by being able to go remote and slowing our activities down a little bit, that when we came back, say January 10th or 15th, that we would be able to start our season again.
So to clarify, if we made a decision today to postpone, we would be making a decision for Nampa to pull out of the conference competitions and then to re-enter themselves. But there really isn't a hope that the whole conference is pushing that.
No, I don't think the whole conference is maybe pushing that, because we saw that in the fall. But I think as athletic directors, there's enough loyalty within the conference that we would be able to adjust our schedules just as we were able to do in football and soccer, volleyball this fall. I think we would be able to adjust that to where it would still be a positive season and something that we could go on with.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair? Mr. Potter, talk to me about, I know girls basketball has already had tryouts, so their teams are formed. Boys basketball has not had tryouts yet. So would they be able to have successful tryouts and the required number of practices in order to even participate in district play? The schedule we have in front of us is just the games that would probably be canceled. So I don't know when district play starts. I'm specifically talking boys basketball just because they haven't even had a chance to, they don't even know who would be on the team.
Right. District basketball for boys is clear down starting February 22nd. And so our idea would be that the open gyms would be able to count as some of those as part of our 10 practices, and that tryouts, if we were able to start, say, January 4th, we would be able to have our 10 practices pretty much in, tryouts be going, and then start the next week. And our boys would still have anywhere from 15 to 12 games. Our girls might be reduced down to 10, but that's better than 0.
Right. And also, can you speak to, again, I'm sorry, the only thing in front of me is the things that are canceled. For wrestling, it looks like Nampa and Columbia would have 6 wrestling tournaments that they would not attend, at least as a high school team, and Skyview 5. How many wrestling tournaments remain after? Raleigh Lane would be the one on January 8th, 9th. How many remain after that? What kind of a season would they have if they were allowed to return?
Looking at our schedule, Columbia would still have 3 tournaments out of the 5 that we're allowed to go to. We would lose the Jerome tournament, and then we'd also lose the East duels that are in Idaho Falls. That's the 17, 18, 19 of December. We would still have Raleigh Lane. We'd be able to go to Tiger Grizz, which is in Idaho Falls, the next weekend. And then I know the other schools do different things, but we go to Weiser on February 5th and 6th. So we would lose two wrestling tournaments and still have 3.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
We are really in the weeds here. We're talking about sporting schedules. We are supposed to be a body that deals with policy. We have a recommendation from our athletic directors and our principals, from medical personnel to push pause. We're hearing that the motivation is to salvage some of the season. We are devolving into emotional concerns for an extracurricular, non-statutory responsibility of this board. And once again, I have to just say, our business is to educate students, and we are spending time and emotions and tears talking about athletics. And I am frustrated by that. I am deeply frustrated by that. I care about sports as well, deeply, but our business is educating kids.
With respect, that is what the difficulty comes when we put items on an agenda within 24 hours that don't allow us to get some of these questions out prior to the meeting, and therefore we are doing it now. So I understand your frustration right now, and I am also taking pause to try to understand the levity of this, knowing that we have been given all this information within 24 hours. And you've also just heard today that no parents have any idea that this is even a consideration right now. So for a lot of people, it is a big deal. So I respectfully just needed to interrupt that. If we want to go ahead and take a vote on the motion, I am okay for that.
Will you remind us what the motion is on the floor?
Sorry, I gotta scroll up. So trustee Keller moved to table this item until the December 8th board meeting, pending the decision by the SIC.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Aye, nay.
Any abstain?
So
I didn't hear Allison.
the names.
I know, I was just.
That's why I asked for the abstain, and it's okay, it goes
Thank you.
fast. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Can you clarify for me who?
We have 2 in favor, trustee Keller and trustee Rost. We have 2 opposed, trustee Kipp and trustee Simpson, and we are politely awaiting trustee Westfall's
Oh, thank you. So nay, and I was trying to think about, so when this was not successful, if we weren't to act on the superintendent's recommendation, we would be operating under our plan, which is red.
Correct.
That participants would play. We had in the past kind of delegated this to the superintendent. So I think the same thing can happen as the motion, is that we could get an update, maybe SIC, or we could have some other motion here tonight or today to approve the superintendent's recommendation. I was just reflecting. So that's why I got lost in thought and forgot to say nay.
No, agreed. You are correct. It doesn't, you are 100% correct with that summarization of where that leaves us today.
So Madam Chair, I would make a motion to receive the superintendent, the district's recommendation for sports as was printed in the agenda.
Second. It's been moved by trustee Kipp, seconded by trustee Simpson. And let's go ahead and read that recommendation, please.
And I'm curious if you're okay. The athletic directors today asked permission to continue with practices under stage 2 requirements, which was not in the original recommendation. What is your pleasure there, trustee Kipp?
My pleasure would be to accept that recommendation and for young people to continue to prepare for a postponed season.
And I second that same motion.
Okay,
So I think the only thing that we'd have to adjust in the written recommendation then is winter athletics and activities, take out the word practice so that they have the ability to continue under stage 2. I think in the written one, there is the word practice. So they would be allowed to continue under stage 2 guidelines with practices. That would include our activities, the dance team, and band orchestra if they had activities, things like that.
I think that's fair. Any further discussion on that motion?
Yeah, this, it's a debate in favor. I prefer they wouldn't practice at all, I just say that. But, this Thanksgiving, I'm not having dinner with my family. We are postponing that because of the conditions we're in. We haven't left them without hope. They'll be able to be conditioned and put in the places where they'll be ready to compete should things change. Our activities directors, the superintendent are saying it's time to pause. And I think it's reasonable to do this. There are small sacrifices and large ones that we are all making during this time, but there's still hope for a season. If they get together and have activities and have to quarantine, there's no season. It delays their season. So it just increases the likelihood that they can play. And they'll still be together. They'll still have that camaraderie, the social and emotional connections that make it important to be part of a team that drives so many kids. But postponement seems very reasonable at this time. And I do share your concerns. I don't like getting things at the last minute without community engagement. But it seems like the time is right to align this with the break and games coming up so fast.
I appreciate that. I can see that. For sure. I can understand definitely your heartfelt thought process on that. Gosh, I wish we could narrow that gap of that date a little earlier than January 4th and still accomplish the same thing, for sure. Maybe an earlier consideration sometime in December. I know we as a board are meeting twice. So I wouldn't mind, coming to some compromise on that exact thought for those same reasons, but recognizing the dates that are at stake here and seeing how things are going, knowing we're still going to get numbers and gauge what's happening. We're going to be able to get some feedback from folks. I was able to reach out to 2 parents when the SIC was pushing and to try to gain some understanding. And I had one parent say, hey, I get the times we're in and whatever happens, I'm good with. Like she literally said, if there's not a season, I get it. And then I had another parent that said, oh my gosh, we have a scholarship on the line. This is our life and I'm super stressed. And by the way, I'd really like to watch. This is a big deal for us. So we do have a lot on both sides. I'm wondering, and I would only be opposed to this for the date reason. And I want to just kind of reach out and ask if we could, we're getting together on the 8th and the 15th of December. And if it would be an option to look at it a little sooner. Other than that, there isn't any other discussion. And no option to amend a motion. We can vote on this motion.
Do I need a second to amend your, is that an amendment?
No, only the person who made the motion could amend the motion.
I'd probably be in favor of.
You can move a new motion. You can move a new motion and then we vote on that and then we go back, and depending on what happens there, then we go back to the original motion. So you can move a new motion.
I can ask to make an amendment to the original motion.
You just move, you make a new motion with your amendment. You get a second, we vote. And then depending on that, if it passes as an amendment, then we don't have to vote on the original. If it doesn't pass, then we go back to voting on the original.
You don't have to vote on the motion on the floor.
That's what I thought.
No, we have to defeat this motion. I'm pretty certain we have to defeat this motion and then there would be a second one.
But so you can amend a motion.
Yes.
You don't need his approval to do so. You just need votes to amend it.
Oh, because we're just amending it. We're not making a whole new.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, and we're getting to our training. So that's a part of our 15th. We're working it out, guys.
Yeah. So as long as you have a second to the amendment to the motion, and then we vote to say, yes, we're willing to amend it or not. And then depending on whether it's amended or not, then we move to vote on the motion. So there may be possible other votes, but it is possible.
Okay.
And we do have ADs that would like to speak if there's an amendment, just so that you understand their thoughts, if you would like to entertain them.
Is that what you were discussing, Betsy, what you asked?
I would be happy to, if it is within my rights to do so, I would be happy to second your
To amend,
amendment.
do us a favor and be an official, since I don't even know that I can make a motion to amendment. To go ahead and make a motion to amend, but come up with a date of what you would, because we're.
So 8th or the
Here's the
16th.
deal, you just have to pass the imaginary
I'm not
gavel.
passing the imaginary gavel on this one again. She's got me.
Okay, so then I make a motion that this will be something that we revisit at our board meeting on December 16th.
I think it's 15.
No, that's my husband's birthday.
Oh, that's right.
But is this a regular board meeting or is this a special board meeting?
That was a work session.
It's a work
It's
session.
a work session, but we have enough time to make, we know we're gathering on that day. We have enough time to make a special.
So we would just revisit the data and the statistics, looking at this on December 16th at our report.
That is your amended motion.
I'd second that amended motion.
And Allison seconds that amended motion. And now we need to vote on that amendment.
Or we can have question and discussion on it, yeah.
The amendment keeps this
Correct.
and changes the date
Correct.
to
That
December
December
16th.
16th, that the board will look at it.
Instead of January.
Correct.
So first the recommendation, but we're going to take a look at it again on the 16th. That's my understanding.
Correct. Everybody in agreement after all that fun? Excellent. So now we
So
vote
now
all
you're
in favor.
voting on the amendment.
No, now we're voting on the
The
amendment.
Yep.
And now we can have discussion and question. And hearing that the ADs would like to comment, I would like to hear
Excellent.
comment on their.
Which is out of order, but we're gonna do it anyway because we feel good about it. Let's do it.
So Mr. Potter or Mr. Bonds, do you have thoughts or comments? It looks like you're both available to speak.
I'd sure like to hear from Eric.
I think starting and stopping will be harder on the kids. I think it'll be harder on us, and I can't speak for the 4As, but it'll be harder on us if we get going and then all of a sudden we get around the 16th, 18th or whatever it is and we stop. It's going to be harder to reschedule those games. So we will possibly lose more games in that fashion. If we reschedule right now, we've already rescheduled and I've already reached out and kind of given West Ada and Boise a heads up that this, something might be coming down. And it'll be easier to work now than it would be to be in the middle of the season where we would be nowhere to reschedule games and it'll be just forfeits.
So I'm confused how that's different because from the original January 4th.
Okay, so if we start playing right now, the boys are going to play on the 15th and the girls are going to start, my girls start on the 1st. So we'll play
Just
games.
1 second, I apologize. We're all gonna stop you real quick. I think there's a misunderstanding of what we're saying. So we're gonna clarify that real quick. I think Allison's got me.
Yeah, I thought we were following the administration's recommendation, including the one brought forward by Mr. Bonds, and that we would touch base on the 16th to see whether we need to revisit and then start. But right now, we're following y'all's recommendation in the motion
To pause.
to pause and then talk about it again on the 16th.
So, okay, so we're going to pause and we're not going to schedule any game. We're going to take those games off. Okay.
We're following
That
your
was-
recommendation,
Yeah, that was a little confusing. All right, well, I got that part.
Thank you.
So
if the motion passes.
I need to clarify, Mr. Potter, Mr. Bonds. So with this motion, we would keep tell us what we would do. Would we keep games on the schedule past the 16th, knowing that we may or may not compete in them? Is that what we would do in working with our SIC colleagues?
We can do that. It would be real tight and pulling some strings that if your board met on the 16th and we have games on the 17, 18, 19, it's going to be tough to just jump right in, and because we're holding these other schools on a string. Having officials and buses, are we going to be able to pull that off in a 24-hour period? Yeah, it'd be tough.
And we hear you, and so we're trying to work with you, and so we need Because it would be the same in that January 4th, right? Because you've got games on January 6th, I'm seeing too. And so I'm sure we can work things out that are going to be mutual beneficial, because I think we're in the same scenario with this recommendation, whether the date's January 4th or whether the date's December 16th.
I think the difference, respectfully, I think the difference might be is if we were told, if we were able to tell our opponents in the conference, hey, we're looking at starting again on January 4th. Let's reschedule games. Let's see how we're going to do that. That's different than calling a school on the evening of the 16th and saying, oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and play tomorrow. So that would be the only difference I see.
So hold on, then maybe I didn't understand this motion, because I thought the motion was that we're gonna postpone winter athletic competition and activities until after January 3rd. With the practicing with the stage 2 guidelines, stage 2 guidelines, that would still occur. But then instead of reconvening on the 4th or the 5th as a board to discuss this and look at recommendations from the superintendent, from the ADs, like that, how is it practical to continue the winter athletics and activities in a safe manner? So I just thought it was, we're actually scooting it back to look at, like, to get another recommendation. Maybe we hear from the SIC, maybe we know more what other schools in the SIC are thinking and doing, but then still from you guys, so that, to me, the first game still played wouldn't be until after January 3rd, because to me it was postponed until then. It was just, we're not waiting until the 4th and the 5th to hear a recommendation. We're asking for it, the recommendation sooner based on what's happening. Is that not the motion? I don't know.
That sounds good.
But I mean, that's what I need to make sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think we, again, 24 hours, we're trying hard.
So for my own brain, Chairman Ross, were you assuming that the conversation would be happening on the 16th, but there would be no change to the schedule? Games would still not be starting until after the 3rd of January. Was that your intent? Or was your intent that we were hoping to get a little more of a season, and so we'd like to talk about it sooner so that the season could begin sooner?
Right. It was no change to the recommendation other than moving the date up earlier, so that we could get more data points, more understanding from SIC, more input from patrons, and then talk about the rest of the season. I just felt that I feel very rushed and premature currently. I'm good to compromise and hit that pause button for right now that allows them to practice. And recognize that we will be pulling some immediate games, but that we need more understanding so that we can make this conversation flow better with more information at an earlier time of December 16th versus January 4th. Does that make sense?
My only question then is, are you anticipating that teams would start play previous to January 4th?
No, I'm saying we won't make that determination until we come back together again on the 16th. And then we're going to need to be very mindful in that conversation. And again, communicate with ADs on what is even practical going forward. But for sure, the communication right now would be nothing would happen prior to the 16th, for sure. And recognizing the 17th and 18th are in jeopardy. I mean, I think that's a recognition point. If we meet again on the 16th, if things move forward, and it isn't even a guarantee, right, on the 16th. I'm just saying, let's pause, pump the brakes, come back with better information to determine the rest of the year, or that can continue that conversation. Is that where everybody else's head's at? I'm seeing some nodding and, okay.
Sure, I just want to ask a clarifying question. What, thinking about the trends,
Yeah.
thinking about those kind of things, I'm afraid on the 16th, we may just be at this same place. So is there something that would help, we might just be here again saying, do we want to have sports or not? Yes, we want to have sports. That's the answer. But we'll still be here having the same conversation. So without it being emotion, what might be helpful? Is it just information gathering? I probably won't be out of the red, probably love to be wrong about that. I keep wanting to be wrong about that, but what would make the difference? Because our remote learning plan has been set. By all past indications, we'll still be in red. So what kind of more information, I guess?
But I'll remind you that our athletic plan currently has us playing in red. Our current athletic plan says that we play in red. There's no spectators.
For me, it would be more information from the SIC, for them to come together, more information and understanding of other districts, more information and understanding of those that it affects directly.
Okay.
And why couldn't they do a process similar to what we just did earlier in the evening, heard from a group with differing opinions about who could really kick around this idea? That are parents and athletes, I don't know, but how do you get those folks engaged? Because right now we heard that hasn't been that conversation. So people aren't shocked, but how do we engage and involve them in shaping it?
I like that idea, Allison. My biggest concern right now is the pounds of hate mail that I'm going to receive tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because this really feels like a pulling the rug out.
Yeah.
To the families who are invested in athletics at our high schools.
And activities.
And activities. Yes, thank you.
It does feel that way. And I think we've tried to come to a compromise, as we've discussed in here, to recognize everybody's, heartfelt opinions and thoughts on these big decisions of what we're trying to do and take on. And so I agree, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And I think we've come pretty close to a pretty decent compromise of understanding and thought. And where are we?
So we have to vote on the amendment.
Okay, everybody has clarity on the amendment.
Is it how Mandy explained it? So that on the 16th.
I didn't hear that because I kept hearing that like a different decision could be made on the 16th and then not the 17th, like knowing well that the 17th, 18th and 19th.
Could we ask, would it be helpful to ask the athletic directors if that would be helpful?
Well, what I heard them already say is that it's more helpful just to say we're postponing until January 3rd, because then they've already scheduled these, made arrangements and people know. It's just like everything, right? The sooner people can know, like, here's what's happening, the better. We're like waiting, going, okay, we're gonna have a vote on the 16th. Or they're gonna have information and maybe no action is taken on the 16th, right? So may or may not change, and then gonna decide like, oh, are we playing on the 17th or 18th? So I don't know. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy and Eric, but what I heard was that giving that further out date made it easier for them to reschedule and plan things with the other schools and districts.
That is correct.
And so I think you're thinking it would be more helpful for you to know when we're turning the faucet on and when we're turning the faucet off.
Good way of putting it, yes.
Okay. And in the current recommendation that you've made to this board, for clarification, are you recommending that we turn the faucet off until January 4th and then turn it right back on come the 5th?
If our numbers and if we feel safe, then yes, I believe that's our recommendation. I think the other thing that, I hate to speak way too much here, but I hope that people understand that the athletic directors, I mean, we're sick over this. We were sick over last spring. We were happy that we were able to kind of get a fall season in, and it's absolutely killing us knowing what our families and our kids that we see every day are going through. But we're also concerned with, we have coaches that are already tested positive. We've just been through 1 week of girls basketball. We've already got girls that are testing positive. And so we're concerned about the safety of our people and our kids. I want to play games every night. That's who we are. But right now, I just believe we're not safe.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question about our current red plan? Because the things that I'm hearing, are we playing in the red or because I thought it was the original plan said nothing, no practice, no anything in red, and that the vote was to change it, that practice could occur in the red. I can't remember. That's just why I'm asking. I wanted to
So
make
we
sure.
actually currently, because we have not updated
that, yeah.
right? So currently, the reopening plan is silent on athletics because you have not changed that.
Well,
So we have a athletic reopening plan that this board changed to include the ability for the district to compete while we're in the red.
okay, so yeah, thank you.
So my question then is this going against our own
It is.
policy?
It is.
This decision would be going against what is currently published as our policy.
Well, it's not policy.
Or that's not the right word. Our current
But yes,
recommendation, I
plan.
don't know what is it, plan.
Yes, that is correct.
And is that a problem?
The conditions have changed, you
Yeah.
know, last
I'm not-
fall.
yeah,
I just want to, you know, I appreciate the
Yeah.
question. So what do you, what way is it different now?
Right.
So for me, you know, I was a big fan. I would have canceled football and let out, you know, the other ones that could control it, cross country, volleyball, they were able to do it. You know, so here now everybody's indoors, much closer. Wrestling's very close. And now we have doctors and the health department saying, you know, as we looked at contact tracing, this just really isn't a good practice right now. And our ADs are weighing in as well. So there's more tipping the scale here. Okay. And knowing that we're trying to save a season of some sort. And certainly the fall seasons have their bumps. So that's where I'm at.
And just one other little bit, and we're starting to push everyone into their homes for the holiday season too. So,
Yeah.
you know, so if girls are getting contacted or getting the virus at basketball practice, they're going to be with their families at Thanksgiving and Christmas and all. And so it seems prudent, if there is hope for a continued season, to push pause right now.
Where's the data? I'm looking at our metrics data because there was a time that we had athletes on here to help us when we were wrestling with this, and that's the more information
I was looking for
that
that.
I'm saying. I would like to pump the brakes a little bit and come back December 16th and look at that.
Shall we vote on the amendment?
Sure. Let's vote on the amendment to change the date to January 16th. All in favor?
December 16th.
Sorry, thank you. December 16th. All
And
in
at that date, we would just survey
look at it again. Look at more information, correct? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. I didn't hear you, and abstain.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 3 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstain. So that amendment passes. Now we need to go to the original motion. And no?
So we just voted to amend it.
Yes.
So now we have to vote on the amended motion because now the original motion's been amended.
Perfect.
Now we vote on this motion.
That the
Right now.
motion, yes.
The current updated.
We just voted we were okay to amend the motion.
Yes.
So now,
That's
So
right.
to clarify for the minutes,
yes.
we are not going to participate in
We don't know that yet. We just voted to
No, I'm
amend the
trying to
motion.
figure out what
What the motion is?
so that we
Perfect.
vote, we know what you voted
The
on.
motion is exactly your recommendation with the change that they would be allowed to practice
Under stage 2
currently, starting immediately throughout this whole time, and that we would reconvene December 16th instead of January 4th. Yes.
And on that day, we would just make a determination about the rest of from 16th on. So
We can't.
okay. So I'm just wondering about the AD's, Mr. Potter's suggestion that it's more helpful to know further out in advance. So on the 16th, are they going to be trying to make adjustments for a January 4th game, possibly? Does that make sense?
No, it does. And respectfully, the concerns of the ADs, it's easier to schedule games on and off. I respectfully for these trustees, I hadn't heard from anyone in this discussion that you were willing to, and correct me in discussion if that's that you wanted the opportunity to come back and look at that versus approve hard and fast on that date. And maybe I'm misinformed on that, but I'm seeing nodding of heads that we're still wanting to come back and have that
That was
discussion.
the motion that passed.
Even though we fully understand and respect that it makes his job more difficult and we get it, but we're still concerned as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone need to correct me as I speak for you, which I should not do? Okay.
It's COVID time, so 2 weeks will be like a half a century. You know, just-
Agreed. And for these folks, you can see there's a significant amount
Yes.
of games and things that will happen in that amount of time for sure. And we'll gain more information in that amount of time is truly my thought of knowing that. And it's going to be yes, we're going to get our emails blown up again. This is a big deal. They haven't given pre-warning, and maybe we can talk to that to them a little bit.
Sorry, may I, when you're finished, sorry, I apologize.
No, we're so late and we're rambling now.
Well, I just want to talk about special board meetings and this notion of like, this is a surprise. Well, none of this to me is a surprise because I've been here since March. Like, none of this is a surprise. And so I want us to be careful about that piece. And you're right, like we may get emails and feedback and, you know, I welcome them. Like we want participation. That's not the issue. So I just want to be careful about that, is that's the nature of a special meeting, is that we're convening it because it is on a time, right? And so it makes sense to me that we're looking at this in the sense that if this is what we're doing with our buildings, is what we're doing across the board matching what we're doing in our buildings.
You're right, so Trustee Simpson, you're right. That is why it's on the agenda, even though it was very quick. And I think equally, the last thing parents knew is they were having a season, it was just delayed. And they probably went to practice today. They might even be at practice now. So it is new information for sure.
Shall we vote?
I think we're ready for a vote. I don't hear any further discussion. So vote on the motion. Everybody understands the motion on the floor? Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
So we have 2 in favor and 2 opposed. The motion passes. Great, thank you.
Opposed were trustee Kip and trustee Westphal.
No, I was a nay.
In favor
Simpson.
were
Opposed.
Yeah.
Trustee Keller, trustee Ross, trustee Westfall are in favor. Trustee Simpson, trustee Kim are opposed. Thank you for helping us
So
clarify.
that we can communicate accurately.
Yes.
What I think you just did is that right now we are suspending competitions. They have permission to practice under stage 2 protocols. And on the 16th of December, this board, when it convenes in its special session, will look forward to determine when competitions could possibly start again.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. And for the ADs listening and for their workload and understanding, there is the spigot is off until December 16th. Then we're going to look to get your feedback on the earliest we can turn the spigot back on for consideration, should we decide to do so. Recognizing there is a lot of logistics that you have to do to be involved for these games and tournaments. So we'll look for your advisement on the 16th
of when you feel that we could turn the spigot on, if at all. We'll, of course, be hearing recommendation from the superintendent.
Perfect. And just a clarification on the spigot, can it go off tonight at midnight so that competitions and things that are planned for this afternoon would continue, that we're really talking about the Thanksgiving on? I mean,
Is that your recommendation?
Actually, I can help clarify that because on the motion, it was after athletics after Thanksgiving. Was there a date on that or the 30th or let's go back to the agenda?
Well, the original written one did say starting November 30th.
But this didn't.
But this didn't say when it was revised. So I was looking for that for help.
So it does
Well,
say.
it got cut off.
Okay.
You see there's a title up there?
Thank you.
It is, if you look at it to the left.
30th,
No, if you look at it to the left to athletics/activities mode in red after Thanksgiving. So yes, there is.
So Sunday at midnight seems appropriate. I don't know if we have anything scheduled on Saturday or not.
I don't know what we have scheduled up until, but that would make sense too, logistically, whatever they currently have planned. They don't have to rush around like crazy right now and cancel. That the spigot is on until midnight on November 30th.
I would say
Midnight,
the 29th.
Midnight the 29th.
Yeah, it says starting, if you see it, it says starting November.
We're looking
30th.
at us get specific on our motions. I like it.
Question, Madam Chair.
Please.
So Superintendent, is there, as we get this feedback from the community who wants to be engaged and these recommendations to us, do we funnel them to the AD at their respective high school? Do you want them all as they shape their information for us in December?
That's a great question.
To Mr. LeBoux?
They could come to me with high school.
I think it might be appropriate for their athletic directors and school leaders at their building, and they could CC secondary director, Mr. LeBoux.
May I clarify that? So if patrons contact us, that would be our point of reference for them, to let them know that that's where they can express their concern or support.
Certainly reading them, but if they want
Exactly.
to influence whatever information comes before us as a updated recommendation, it would be filtered through those folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. AD's on the line. Anything we can help clarify while we're here?
Do we have a need for a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 at this point?
No, we have went ahead and had a 2.5-hour meeting and made all our decisions.
So we declare that we will cancel that and there will be no special session of this board tomorrow.
Correct. We can absolutely cancel tomorrow morning's meeting. Thank you guys for all your time, extended time today. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.